Which tool are you working on? The flocking one. Okay, so what I'm just gonna show you here real quick, this is a prime example. This is a perfect prime example of what we can do with flocking. What I've got driving here is I've got essentially three armies of aliens, and they're tracking two separate goals that are moving through this landscape. Each one of these, there are, I believe there's 5 different run cycles built into these. They're going to be scanned with MDD, played back in a random thing. They're placed amongst all of these flocking agents. Yes, the flocking agents. And what we are dealing with then is a way to control all of these things running across the ground, running across the surface of something. In this particular case, because these are quadrupeds, they're running on the ground, so I want to ground them. I want them to not, float off. I want them to stay on terra firma. So this is just a very quick and easy setup. This is also using instancing. If you had seen my prior thing on instancing, this is another prime example, because again, this is just one character with just a few different motions applied to it. The flocking is controlling it and driving it across the ground. If you have an earlier version of Lightwave, especially earlier versions of 11, you will see that there are some things that have changed between 11 and 11.5. A few tools have been added because they provide more control. One of the things which was the flocking actually had a lock to ground control that has been removed in favor of node graph. So in the flock generator, this particular node graph is extremely simple. All I'm doing, again, agent info node, is being fed into a multiply to just zero out the Y. Instantly, it's going to run across the ground. That's it. Now, if in addition, or maybe I don't have a flat ground, maybe I wanted this to run across an uneven surface, or maybe a terrain that I have created, let's just see how easy that would be to set this up. So what I'm just going to do is I'm going to clear this out, and let's create a sort of little ground plane. Let's give it some distance. Let's give it some segments. Let's go a whole bunch so that we can see what we're dealing with. And so now I've got a ground plane. Properties of this, let's deform it. I'm going to do it with the node editor so that I can add a turbulence. And again, this, let's just do the same kind of thing. I'm going to add a vector. Helps if you can spell. And so the color I'm going to feed into the Y, vector into here. And this gives me my control for how big to make it. 10, 10. So we've now got a nice little undulating ground surface. I'm going to go ahead and select these. And now let's set up our flocking. Again, flocking tool right here. This is our master panel. This is where I can add things directly, or I can select things and add them as a plugin. I'm going to add a generator. I need a generator because that's what creates my agents. And then let's have a goal. So where do we go? We all need a goal, don't we? We all should have goals. And I particularly like my goals to be red and have a flag on the end of them. That went over great at the blind school. I don't know what you guys are doing. So anyway, grab the flock. I'm going to bring this back. And let's do a little bit of modification on him. So what we're going to do, we'll do this size, but I want to do a larger generator. So let's make it a bigger one. Let's take our agents and give them a physical size so they'll stay apart from each other. It gives them a zone. So this will allow them not to collide with one another. And let's give them a base speed. So again, if I hit calculate right now, I'm not going to see anything because they're actually running underneath this ground surface. So what I need to do is I need to tell them, use that same deformation so that they run across the surface of our ground. So let's edit our nodes. We'll paste in what I just did. Pull up our agent node. We're going to multiply. So what we want to do is we want to zero out our initial Y value. So this zeroes it out. So this would be the same as if I was just running across a flat ground plane. Now what I want to do is I want to add what I just did in my deformation. Very simply, add vector, and the result goes to their position. So again, we run a calculate. And I have now decided that having hot pink for my little guys are not that great. So there they are, and now they're running across the surface of the ground. It's just that easy. I say it's just that easy because, you know, I'm one of those people who like math. You know, not everyone likes math. Find a geek and, you know, have him do some math for you. It can help, but it's actually extremely easy if you just realize what you're working on. So let's go ahead and make this a little bit bigger. I'm going to grab the goal here, and I'm going to change one thing of it. I'm going to change its arrival radius. I want to have it a lot larger. Rather than having them all try to run to a single point, or somewhat of a single point, if I increase their arrival radius, then as these things run across the ground, and I may have actually made them too big. Yep, I think I did. So let's go back to just a touch larger than it was. And so now here they come running across. So again, very simple. Director, or a generator is where they're created. A goal is where they go to. Very, very, very quick, very simple. Let's go ahead and get away from the ground, and let's just play with this directly. So let's do what I just did. Generator, goal, and I'm going to leave it. I'm going to leave this just as its position, but what I do want to do is I want to go ahead and change my speed and not have it match any velocity. So right now they're both on top of one another, but I do need to do one thing. This decelerate radius I want to take away from my goal. That's a cushion. That's where my agents are going to run toward where I'm telling them to, and as they get closer, they're going to slow down. For this particular feel that I want to do, I don't want them to do that. So what I have really just created here is a group of 27, well, gnats. Now, one of the things that a lot of people have asked for is this is great, but I want to be able to implement some of the stuff into our existing particle effects, like having some particles being born from the particles. One way that we've gotten around that, particularly in 11.5, is from the flock generator. I have a button now called Save PFX. So once I've calculated this, I can click Save PFX, and I'm just going to come out here directly and say this is my PFX. Items, and what we would do here is we would add in a particle, and we would load that PFX motion. But anyway, that's one way of baking the flock to be able to use it in something else.